is the Louie T Network.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to lockdown coverage week number 15 in the National Football League. New York Jets taking on the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints got the Jets at the perfect time of the season. No Josh McCown. And it's funny to say that, but McCown was actually having a career year in New York with the Jets. And so they were a dangerous team every single week because you didn't know what Jets team was going to show up. Were the Jets that got shut out and trounced in Denver, were they going to show up? Or was the team that scored 38 points versus the Chiefs that beat them in New York just a couple of weeks ago, was that team going to show up? You didn't know. The team that almost beat the Falcons, the team that almost beat the Panthers, they're a scary group when they show up and they play football. But with Bryce Petty at quarterback, there's not much to worry about with this Jets football team. And I hate to keep piling on the kid because everybody's doing it. You know, it's the trendy thing to do, but I must mention this once. How bad does Christian Hackenberg have to be if he can't get on the field and Bryce Petty stinks and they keep putting Petty in the game before they even give Hackenberg a sniff? Man, he has to be awful. In any event, the Saints took care of business, did what they were supposed to do, 31-19 over the Jets. This game was a lot closer than I expected it to be. I thought they would be able to run and hide with this one. And it started out like they were going to be able to do that. Ingram was a man possessed early in this game, making some big runs, setting up some scores for this Saints football team. But some mistakes, 2 fumbles by Brandon Coleman kept the Jets alive in this game and allowed them to hang around. But the Saints, again, did enough. Drew Brees took care of the football for the most part in this game. Found Michael Thomas a ton of times. Ingram was good, not only on the ground, but in the air. Good to have Alvin Kamara back. Even though they scaled back his role in this game, I don't think they wanted to put him at risk. He probably could have used a week out. They knew that, so they didn't have him featured as much in this game. It was more of the Mark Ingram show. Nonetheless, Ingram was outstanding, and that's really all they needed. And the Saints did a good enough job defensively of creating some turnovers because their offense, which is uncharacteristic of them this year, turned it over a little bit in this game. So they needed to produce a couple turnovers, and they were able to do so. Picked off Bryce Petty a couple of times and made some plays. Marshawn Lattimore got a pick at the end to pretty much seal the deal. It was just good to see this team making some plays. Craig Robinson with a pick after Ken Crawley able to get his hands in on the football and deflect it. So the defense made some plays to offset some of the mistakes made by the offense. The ground game was good. It wasn't great, but it was good enough. But Drew Brees through the air and Ingram especially was outstanding in this game. Michael Thomas continues his ascension in this league as one of the top receivers. Another strong game for him. Defensively, like I said, a lot of hands-on balls for the Saints, a lot of batted balls. They had Bryce Petty down to a science. When he was ready to throw, that football was coming out low. Petty, not the biggest quarterback in the world, and so they were able to get their hands up, deflect a lot of footballs in this game, and Bryce Petty stinks. He really does. Missed a lot of open receivers, was off target. And give some credit to these Saints defenders, too. Not a lot of space, not a lot of separation created in this game, but when guys were open, Petty wasn't doing a good enough job of hitting them. He did throw a couple of nice deep balls, did Bryce Petty, for some completions in this game, but not enough accuracy on the part of Bryce Petty to give them a realistic shot of coming away with the victory here. Did use his legs a couple of times, and I thought that was impactful as well, something that they may need to tap into moving forward. But again, just not good enough as a pure passer of the football to get the job done, as the Saints were able to do what they were supposed to do. Take care of a bad Jets team at home, get to 10 wins, and give themselves a great shot at next week locking up this division with the win over the Falcons. They win that game, they win the division. They lose that game, the Falcons are going to win the division in my mind. So to me, next week's game, a rematch of a good game on Thursday night just a week ago, going to decide the division. And I'm really looking forward to that matchup. Meanwhile, the Jets are going to go home and take on, I forget who they're going to play at home next week. But it's a team that needs a win, that should be able to go to New York and get a win. And so I'm anticipating that the Jets, I don't see them winning another game with Bryce Petty at quarterback. I just don't. It's a shame what happened to Josh McCown, because they could have won 7 or 8 games this year with McCown at the helm. You know, there were opportunities for them to maybe really make some strides and build some momentum heading into next year. And I know a lot of people don't think that momentum goes from one season to the next, but there's a culture that you establish when you win football games. And they're not going to establish any kind of winning culture with Bryce Petty at quarterback. And so they've got the Chargers at home. They're not going to win that game. So in any event, Saints take care of business, and they get the win. They go to 10-4 on the season. Looks like I forgot the actual 4 on the record. So let's fix that right now. As they go to 10-4 on the season, and are one win away, essentially, next week from clinching the NFC South division. Let's get to some comments quickly and get out of here. Nathan Long says, something I really like about this team is the next man up mentality. 7 starters ended up on IR: Fairley, Kuhn, Anzalone, Fleener, Streif, Okafor, Bro. He says, also tons of players missed time like Pete, Armstead, Wolford, Kamara, Klein, Ginn, Snead, Hendrickson, Lattimore, Crawley, and Vaccaro. That's where depth comes into play, and that's why the draft was so impactful for this team. I can't continue to state enough how good of a draft that Mickey Loomis and company turned in this past offseason, with all the guys that you brought in that have impacted this team. Trey Hendrickson, Alvin Kamara, you look at Lattimore. I mean, these are all key contributors to this football team in their rookie seasons. And there are probably a ton more guys. Marcus Williams at the safety position. I mean, there are so many good football players that have been hatched from this 2017 draft. And really, you could take a step back and look at last year's draft and all the guys that you've been able to bring in. The Saints have done a really good job of filling in some of the blanks. And we've questioned this front office over the last couple of years, the trading of Jimmy Graham, the trading of Kenny Stills, the trading of Brandon Cooks. We've questioned them. You know, you also look at the other first-round pick you drafted this year in Ryan Ramczyk. There's been so much production out of the young guys. So, and even free agency, let's not forget that. Going out and getting Larry Warford. I mean, these are all moves that have impacted this team in a positive manner. They've done some really good things, and it's starting to pay off for this football team. And we got to give credit to the general manager, Mickey Loomis, for some of the moves he's made and some of the improvements made to this roster as they've continued to get it done this season. John Niner says, if the Saints can get home field, they would be a scary team in the playoffs. That would be scary. I just don't see it happening. They're going to have to win out, get to 13-3, or excuse me, get to 12-4, and then they're going to need a ton of help. They're going to need the Raiders to beat the Eagles, not happening. And they're going to need the Raiders to not only beat the Eagles, then they need the Cowboys the next week to do the same. Again, not happening. And then you're going to need the Vikings to implode down the stretch. Again, not happening. I don't see Aaron Rodgers playing next week against the Vikings. And even if he does, doesn't mean they're going to beat the Vikings. And in Week 17, the Vikings have the Bears. They're not losing that game either. So they're not getting home field advantage. But the Saints are going to be a scary team. But I think them being at home would make them even more tough to deal with. Them on the road, I think they can be handled. I think they can be neutralized on the road. And so I agree with you. They'd be a more dangerous team at home. But unfortunately for them, the NFC is so tough this year that not even 12-4 is good enough to qualify you for a first-round bye in 2017 in the NFC Conference. Great point, Nathan Long. A lot of depth with this Saints team, which has allowed them to persevere in the face of injuries. Next man up has been a big moniker in this league for every team. And the teams that handle that moniker the best are the teams that have the most success. Saints have been among the best this year at the next men up mentality. They're now 10-4 on the season with this 31-19 win over the Jets. Jets dropped to 5-9, and they've overachieved. I told you they overachieved in my mind with the 5th win of the season. But I told you when they won that 5th game that they probably weren't going to win many more games this season. And I told you I think they were done. They're not winning another game. They're going to end up 5-11, and it's a shame because if there wasn't the injury to Josh McCown, they probably would have been able to win at least another game. Unfortunately, his injury marks the end of any competitive football from the Jets for the remainder of this season. So it's going to do it for Jets and Saints. Saints get the win, get to 10-4, and set up a massive matchup. Obviously, pending what the Falcons do tonight on Monday Night Football versus the Bucs. We fully expect them to take care of business, but it's family business, so you know how that goes. Anything can happen, but Falcons take care of business tonight. That'll set up a showdown next week with the Saints, most likely for the division. A Saints win next week, they win the division. A Saints loss, and most likely they're not going to win the division. So we'll see what happens. In any event, Saints get it done. 31-19 over the Jets. Go to 10-4 in the season. Remain the #1 team right now in the NFC South Division. They're a good football team, and they continue to prove that week in and week out. I've got much more on lockdown coverage. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you're doing so. And I got more. Don't go anywhere. More lockdown coverage coming your way here in a second. I'll see you very, very shortly.